Now that we found the Ark and discovered the temple, it's now time to find the Holy Grail and what should have been the end.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for the third installment of another review series I'm also reviewing. And this is for the live action review series I'm doing this month. This, of course, is also what really should have been the ending of the series. And not only that, it's also the ending of a decade. And ironically, this series started at the very start of the decade. And technically, this version, good version of the series, ended at the very end of the decade. And that film is going to be for none other than 1989's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which, like the others, is directed by Spielberg and produced by George Lucas. So what's the plot of this movie? Well, an art collector appeals to Indiana Jones to embark on a search for the Holy Grail. He learns that another archaeologist has disappeared while searching for the precious goblet, and that missing man is his own father, Dr. Henry Jones. The artifact is much harder to find than they expected, and its powers are too much for those impure of heart. So yeah, how was this made? Well, Lucas and Spielberg had intended to make a trilogy of Indiana Jones films since Lucas had first pitched Raiders to Spielberg in 1977. Though they signed for 5 films with Paramount Pictures by 1979, and after the mixed critical and public reaction to the Temple of Doom, Spielberg decided to complete the trilogy to fulfill his promise to Lucas with the intent to evoke the film with the spirit and tone of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Temple of Doom writers Willard Hayek and Glory Cutts chose not to return due to both having other commitments and feeling satisfied with their work in this second film. And throughout the film's development and pre-production, Spielberg admitted that he was consciously regressing in making the film. Due to his commitment to the film, the director had to drop out to direct Big and Rain Man. Lucas initially suggested making the film a Haunted Mansion movie, to which Romancing the Stone writer Diane Thomas wrote a script, and Spielberg rejected the idea because of the similarity to Poltergeist, which he had co-written and produced several years earlier. And Lucas first introduced the Holy Grail an idea for the film's prologue, which was to be set in Scotland. He intended the Grail to have a pageant basis, with the rest of the film revolving around a separate Christian artifact in Africa. And Spielberg did not care for the Grail idea, though, which he found too esoteric. And even after Lucas suggested giving it healing powers and the ability to grant immortality, much like the fictional magic power given to the Ark in the first one of the trilogy. And in September 1984, Lucas completed an 8-page treatment entitled Indiana Jones and the Monkey King, which he soon followed with an 11-page outline. And the story saw Indiana battling ghosts in Scotland before finding the Fountain of Youth of Africa. And Chris Columbus, who had written the Spielberg-produced Gremlins, The Goonies, and Young Sherlock Holmes, was hired to write the script. His first draft, dated May 3rd, 1985, changed the main plot device to a garden of immoral peaches, and it began in 1937 with Indiana battling the murderous ghost of Barbara Steamus Seagrove. Third in Scotland, Indiana traveling to Mozambique to aid Dr. Karen Clare. But then, of course, that idea did not happen. They went with the Grail. So yeah, because after the criticism Temple of Doom received, Spielberg wanted to make a more lighthearted film for the next installment and bring back several elements from Raiders. Yeah. And during those 5 years, him and Spielberg wrote several scripts. And the filming locations include Spain, Italy, West Germany, Jordan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And after the film was finally shot and marketed after 5 whole years, The Last Crusade would go on to be released by Paramount Pictures in the United States on May 24th, 1989, and was a financial success at the box office. It became the highest grossing of the original 3, earning $474.2 million worldwide at the box office, and it became the highest grossing film of 1989 as a result. And for reactions, the film received highly positive reviews for Ford and Connery's performances, humor, the father and son relationship, action sequences, and John Williams' score. And it also won the Academy Award for Best Sound Effects Editing and received 2 other nominations as well. Now as for my reaction, well, what can I say? This easily has to be one of the few times the third entry is not the worst, and is by far the best of the Indiana Jones sequels. After the darkness of Temple of Doom, fans needed this movie to go back to the more fun routes of Raiders we were all familiar with. Some fellow YouTubers of mine actually think this is the best Indiana Jones movie, but I still prefer Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we'll get to why on that part later. When the 2 great filmmakers in the world teamed up to create the best action movie of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark, it seemed unlikely that they could duplicate their divinely inspired work. And after they had a miss with the much better received now Temple of Doom, Last Crusade came pretty close to doing just that. A film history's most profitable star, Harrison Ford, around the time, returns to his signature role in the performance that really speaks for itself and benefits greatly from a gallery of memorable supporting characters, which includes Sean Connery, rest in peace, who plays Indiana's father, Henry Jones. And he really does it well. And Denholm Elliott can't seem to help stealing every scene he's in as Marcus Brody, the lifelong friend of the Jones family, as well. And the movie stands by itself in the way it deals with spirituality, and it sticks with religious themes throughout without overly preaching it to you. It has a very difficult balance to achieve in any film, and that alone makes the film stand out as brilliant. It's more abundant with humor than the previous 2 films, without the characters falling to irritating self-parody. And being a sequel, this is a difficult balance to achieve as well. And definitely... And of course, around the time this movie came out, every Indiana Jones fan, obviously on the planet, presumed The Last Crusade was going to be the final film to feature the legendary Indiana Jones. But we know that did not happen, because 19 years later, they made another movie. But Last Crusade should, and of course, will always be to me the trilogy closer it was meant to be, and the true closer to the Indiana Jones franchise. Now, we all know, though, in 1988, Spielberg was deep into bringing Rayman to fruition, and all thoughts of Indiana Jones had gone by the wayside with the harshly judged Part 2 Temple of Doom. And then instead, George Lucas to politely remind Spielberg that they had an agreement to make another Indiana Jones picture. And Spielberg no doubt obliged and humbled, and passed on his Rayman work to Barry Levinson, who promptly begged himself an Oscar for the film. But it can be guessed that Spielberg was... We all know Spielberg was probably really grouchy on this period because, well, when making Temple of Doom, he was going through a divorce. But he didn't have much to worry, though. Last Crusade proved to be a hit, like Raiders was. It finally got the critical acclaim Raiders got. And it pretty much went back to the Raiders routes. In the third entry, this one combines action, adventure, and surprisingly comedy in one Titan-focused movie. And much of the comedy is owed to Sean Connery playing Indiana Jones' father, Henry Jones. This entry is as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's entirely understandable to see why some audiences may prefer Last Crusade over Raiders, although I still prefer Raiders. This is a movie that edges more towards comedic action-adventure. Last Crusade does not skimp on the action scenes. It's a movie that took the phenomenal white-knuckle action of the previous 2 movies in different settings, and the action set pieces of the movie are an absolute sublime in their execution. It is as if the earlier entries in the franchise are more for the experience in setting up what the audiences would like in this movie. And the action setup combined to form a blend of busting comedy and intense action that is a wonder to behold. And easily the best part of this movie, without a doubt, is definitely the scenes between Indy and his dad. Harrison Ford and Sean Connery were downright hilarious in their chemistry, and they had very great chemistry in general. I believed in this movie they actually seemed like father and son. The action scenes are even fantastic, and unlike Raiders, the pacing is actually perfect here. It's a perfect blend of action, comedy, drama, and adventure. Most of the special effects have held up pretty well. Yeah, some stuff is obviously green screen, but most of it's not noticeable. The villains are good here, not quite as good as the ones from Raiders or even Temple, but they're decently threatening enough. And the adventure element is great here, and sort of a mystery as well, and the treasure hunt as well. And heck, in the beginning scene, River Phoenix actually does look like a young Harrison Ford here, so they got the casting for young Indiana Jones here right. Speaking of River Phoenix here, I even like how This movie even starts off as a prequel again, where we actually see a younger Indiana Jones going on his first adventure to finding this crucifix owned by Coronado while exploring caves with his Boy Scout troop in Utah, and believing this crucifix belongs in a museum. Jones takes the crucifix and evades the robbers to return home, but the town sheriff is actually in on their schemes, and he makes Jones hand it over to the robbers employer. But one of the robbers, though, was secretly amazed at Indy's optimism and bravery. It's like, you lost today, kid, but don't let it hit you down. And he gives him the iconic hats. That's became such an iconic thing in this franchise. And then years later, in 1938, which is technically 2 years after Raiders, though technically, since I pretend Temple of Doom is a sequel, I just pretend it's 2 years after Temple of Doom. Jones again confronts the employer of the Portuguese coast and recovers the crucifix and escaping, which pretty much finally completes that journey after nearly 30 whole years. There. And Steven Spielberg in this has the truest instincts for keeping an audience visually engaged and has natural command of the simple mechanics of storytelling. It enables him to evoke a kind of pop transcendence that comes close to the effect of the higher classical arts. Here he delivers the action with breathless enthusiasm in a movie bursting with thrilling action set pieces. Indy discovers catacombs, sways through rat-infested tunnels, finds himself right beside the fur, and even manages to reach the converted Holy Grail, making the pursuit wonderfully perilous. But it's not just the relentless action that you eventually prize in this lavishly executed entertainment. It's the amazing chemistry between its two lead actors that makes it so thoroughly entertaining, never allowing the film to lose sight of the continuous but charming relationship between Indiana and his father. And as soon as Connery's Henry welcomes his son's first rescue attempt by addressing him as Junior, and discover they have better the same gorgeous Nazi spy, the right note of cantankerous and grudging affection on both sides is struck, like Connery playing against type as a bookworm professor, as solid gold as Indy's crotcher father. He brings out the very best in Ford, who is at his trying best as a rugged macho Indy. And the snappy byplay between them adds this wonderful facet to the adventure and together. Like, their timing is impeccable. And the newfangled component this time is how Spielberg even enhances some of Indy's backstory here. We discover his real name, we meet his father, and like the fathers of typical boy stories, Dr. Jones is not apparent so much as a full-grown partner. Just his older chum lacks full-body characterization. In this part, well, here, but here though, this movie is like kind of feels like it's about Indy and his dad now having to warm up to each other because they seem like they have a bit of a disgruntled relationship at the start of the film. And then they later start to kind of bond better here with this movie. Here, finally get to reconnect throughout this whole journey. This one easily has the best message here. And what Ford does looks so simple, so dry, that few other stars could keep such a square and poker-faced poise amid such pandemonium. And because after young Indy learns his life's missions in the early high point, the predominant plot is set after Raiders, where Henry Jones is snatched by bandits, who are certain he knows where the Grail is hidden, which of course he does. And Indy, having to work from his dad's notebook, trails from the States to the waterlogged burial chambers under Venice, and then to the burial legions of the Holy Land. There's a fun chase, including a formidable Nazi armored tank. It is scored on a second edition by Dr. Elsa Schneider, this other art historian he meets at Venice. But the characters is a letdown because, especially compared to Marion and Raiders, well, though, slightly, and I dare to say this, but even Willie was a better love interest than Elsa Schneider is. And in comparison to Raiders, this script does feel more polished, utilizes comedy more effectively, and includes set pieces that are just as entertaining as those seen previously in that film. That being said, though, at first there's a bit of sense of been there, done that, since the early scenes are a little too similar to the first film, but the film soon finds its groove and doesn't let up until the credits roll. And Spielberg's direction is once again top-notch, the special effects are solid, and John Williams returns with another Oscar-nominated score that recaptures the spirit of the original, and production values are at first rate. And throughout the movie, you can't even help but notice how much Indiana Jones' father disagrees with him when we first meet them, or doesn't approve of anything he does. But when Indiana saves his father from being killed, his father just shakes his head and makes us believe he still isn't happy with Indiana, but for the most part, the movie is told from Indiana Jones' point of view. The movie even starts showing off how symbolic it is that he uses his whip. And you probably know the Indiana Jones theme song, which is played a few times throughout these movies. And Spielberg does an awesome job while using the camera to use panning and zooming in and out of the scene. He also uses lighting to indicate that if Indiana doesn't hurry up to find the Holy Grail of the temple, his father will die. And the most tense moment right there. And the whole movie is shot from a third-person point of view. Like, the director, Spielberg uses the camera as a narrator. He does this to show the audience what he wants them to see. Like, in a way, the film becomes different than in the original book. And the setting of the story, like, takes place in a few different places. They start off in Utah in the 1900s. Then we slowly progress it to multiple different locations, unlike the other movies, where we just get a few locations. Temple of Doom is just kind of one location or two locations. Here, this is like several locations. The first Indiana Jones film to be set in several areas. And then we arrive at our final destination, the Holy Grail. The whole purpose of the quest was to find the Grail and put it to a museum where everyone could enjoy it. That doesn't end up happening though, we all know that. And to figure out the time period of the movie, you could use different clues such as clothing style. You notice that the clothes the characters are wearing resemble that of someone from the 1920s, and that's exactly what Spielberg wanted to do. Show you the date, not tell you it directly, and towards the end of the film you could use clues to figure out their location. You could easily tell this. When you see lots of camels and vast amount of desert surrounding them even, and that funny moment is like, there's this funny moment where Sala wants to pick up the camels, but Indiana's like, no camels. But of course Sala picks up the camels anyway. He's like, what did I say about camels? Yeah, like, and of course Indiana doesn't want camels on this journey because they're slow. They're not like horses where they're quick. Like, camels are really slow to get to the Nazis quick. Camel's not going to get Indiana anywhere. This movie's got much more comic relief than I ever to, and it keeps the tone light and the pace brisk. And here, and I like that. Like, unlike a lot of sequels today where the comedy feels forced and unneeded, this movie actually does comedy right. It evenly balances it. It doesn't feel overly dragged out, and it doesn't feel too like it's just being too watered down here. No, they still have the same like tone as some of the other films, but they have a more comedic element to it. It's not like Marvel levels of comedy here, no. The comedy feels evenly great here, and it feels perfectly deserved for this one. And I think we needed a more comedic installment after how Temple of Doom was. And it was definitely needed. And it's also mostly funny because of Sean Connery's performance. He brings flair to the whole production, and doesn't hog the stage for it. He brings out the very best Harrison Ford. These two have very hilarious rapport and chemistry here, especially when they exchange for the motorcycle ride, and every time Indy plows down another baddie, it's priceless. And relationships like with that Last Crusade and Raiders, in some ways is similar to that of Return of the Jedi and A New Hope. In both trilogies, their third installment recycles a lot of the material of the first, but tries to flesh out the characters and deepen our emotional connection to them. The difference though, Last Crusade is, well, technically about nearly as good as Return of the Jedi, actually. There is no difference. And they both pack a surprising emotional heft in the last few scenes. Right. And especially, like, during the tank scene, right there, when we get that funny shot of that Nazi, like, falling down the tank, and it looks like he's literally on a roller coaster, we see his screaming face as he's, like, the tank's going all the way down. We even hear him scream, then we see his face, and the tank crashes into the ground, and the Nazi just looks like a dummy as it stumbles out of the tank dead. And then we also get an emotional moments where, at first, Henry thinks that his son Indiana is dead, because we didn't really see him get off the tank in time, but we as an audience obviously know he may still be alive, but it actually looks like he's really dead, and then he's like, I never got to tell him I loved him. And he's finally realizing that he didn't pay more, kind of wishing he paid more attention to his son. But then if you find out Indy's alive, and we get their first heartfelt moment together, where his dad was like, I thought I lost you, and it's a perfect moment right there. We finally see them bond properly here, and he eventually finally stops calling him Henry, and during the final scene, he finally calls him Indiana, one of the other great scenes here. But what's more is we even see the return of Sala from Raiders, and he even gets more funny moments like with the camel scene I mentioned, and he gets much more to do here than he did in Raiders. And he's more of a character this time, because unlike Raiders where he just helps Indy and Mary get the arc and then just leaves the rest of the film, He actually accompanies the leads for the remainder of the journey and even rides off in the sunset with them, so he actually feels like a character in this movie. So I like they brought back Sala. And I really like the way this movie ends. After the tank scene, like when they arrive in Haiti, Sala meets up with them and reveals to Jones and Henry that the Nazis were traveling there using the map. And while they're following the trail, the Nazis are attacked by the Order but defeat them. And Henry takes advantage of the distraction to try to rescue Marcus, but he gets captured. Jones attacks a Nazi convoy and is eventually able to destroy it with the help of Henry and Marcus. And they proceed to a temple containing the Grail, where they observe the Nazis attempting to overcome the temple's traps before being captured. And Donovan forces Jones to find a way for them by mortally wounding Henry. Yeah, like, there's another twist. And another twist there, we even found out that Elsa was working with the Nazis. Was technically also a spy as well. And of course, Donovan was also with them as well. And he pretty much blows his redemption by wounding his dad. Right here. So now Jones has to pretty much find a way there in order to save his dad. So with the help of the diary, he overcomes the traps and finds a room with many cups and an ancient knight, who explains that only one cup is the true grail, and he was pretty much guarding the whole thing. And then Donovan and Elsa had actually followed him there. And then we find out Donovan's biggest downfall and flaw. I'm not a historian. I don't know what it looks like. So right there he reveals that he's not a historian, and that pretty much makes his whole quest pointless if he's not even one. So Elsa, but you can kind of see Elsa seemed a little shocked that he shot Henry. Like, because I think she just wanted to help them get the Grail. I definitely don't think she wanted any kind of murder involved here. Like, don't think she really wanted Henry or Indy killed. So I think Elsa decides, like, maybe it's better not to work with the Nazis, and decides to betray Donovan and gives him the Ron cup that looks all golden. And of course, Donovan dies by pretty much aging rapidly, so you still get like one little frightening moment in this one. Like, all the indie films have a frightening scene. Raiders, you have the face melt. Temple of Doom, you have pretty much the whole second half of the movie, specifically the heart removal. And in this one, you have the rapid aging death. And also inspired this phenomenal quote. He chose poorly. And now Jones is pretty much trying to figure out which one is going to be the Grail. And he knows, like, if it's gold, none of them are going to be it. So Jones finds this little smaller clay-like cup, like little Play-Doh-like cup or something. Picks that up. Uses the little water testing to test drink. Takes a sip of it. And the Knight's like, because nothing bad happens to Indiana Jones after he drinks it, the Knight's like, you chose wisely. So he identifies the Grail, although the Knight does warn him not to take the Grail past the whole area. But he leaves with but of course he brings the Grail with the water in it and uses it to save Henry. Right there. So Henry gains immortality right there. And Jones, like, maybe Jones did gain some immortality because he test drinked it. So I guess both of them now have some immortality there. But of course, Elsa ignores the Knight's warnings and tries to take the Grail from the whole area, even though Indiana clearly knew the Knight had warned them that they were not supposed to take the Grail outside of it, the whole temple. And so the whole area collapses, destroying several Nazis fall their deaths, and Elsa Schneider then falls to her death because she attempts to leave with the Grail. So Elsa was still greedy in the end, and she paid the price for it with her life by trying to take the Grail out. Jones is also now in her position, and he tries to grab it, but Indiana's dad, Henry Jones, he's pretty much like, Indy, let it go. And yeah, it pretty much shows, like, throughout their journey, Henry realized that the Grail was not the Grail itself. It shows he never needed the Grail. We find out in the end, the real Holy Grail they were both looking for the whole time were both Henry and his son reuniting and rebonding again the proper way, like they never really got to do. Because he's like, Elsa never believed in the Grail. thought she only had a prize, and it pretty much reveals right there that them reuniting was the real Holy Grail, and the real treasure they were supposed to find was each other. That's why this movie should have been the end of the series. Jones and his dad finally reconnected, they reunited, they reconsoled, and Jones and his companions even managed to escape, riding off into the sunset. It's the perfect book ending right there. But nope. 19 years later, they made another one. And now they're making a fifth. However, I'll admit, 4's not terrible, but it still wasn't really needed. Granted, there's worse. I'd watch 4 over much worse sequels that do suck, but especially that 5th one we're getting, that'll obviously be worse than 4. And I'm already starting to better respect 4 after the things I've read about 5. Because 4 at least has Mary come back, and it still had a good ending for Indiana Jones too. Like, I kind of wish the wedding scene, to be honest, were part of the Last Crusade here. Like, the wedding scene was actually one of the best things about 4. Like, I kind of wish that the wedding scene could have been in Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, and you could have had like Short Round and Willie even cameoing at the wedding, and Saul even cameoing at the wedding. Like, just all the side characters and all of his companions from the movies all watching the wedding, and that would have been a perfect book close to the series perfectly right there. But yeah, this ending was great. Indiana riding into the sunset, reuniting with his dad, realizing the real treasure Indiana was supposed to be searching for all these years. Same with his dad even, was just finding each other. That was the thing they wanted all these years. And they finally got it. Perfect way to wrap up a series we didn't need to make any more. But they did anyways. Could there be any bad qualities? Well, sure. I do think the Nazis as the villains again is kind of a rehash of Raiders villains, but I can live with that since this was meant to redeem the series after Temple's bad criticisms it got at the time. And people can say Willie is annoying, but I think Elsa is easily the worst love interest of these films. Yes, worse than Willie Scott. Because, like, Elsa just feels so bland and bored, and even betrays Indy to the Nazis, but then somehow just suddenly rejoins Indy again near the end, but then dies trying to take the grill out of the area and been warned not to? What kind of a love interest is that? Willie was annoying, but she got more likable near the end. Elsa just... How in the world is this even a love interest if she just betrays Indy, then rejoins Indy? What was the whole point of this character? But I think that's all I think, because Last Crusade is still a great third entry, and it's to always be the true end to the Indiana Jones franchise. In the end, The Last Crusade is the perfect watch and buy for any Indiana Jones fans that want to go back to the fun nature of Raiders after the mean bleakness of Temple of Doom, and want to see a great send-off to the greatest adventure of all time. Anyways, that's it for my review of The Last Crusade. You're wondering how I'm going to rank The Last Crusade? Here's how I'm going to rank this movie.
So overall, if you love The Last Crusade and want to see this series properly wrap up like it should have with this movie, then I would highly recommend watching and buying this movie for your collection for sure to complete your indie collection. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank The Last Crusade, I'm going to give The Last Crusade a 9 out of 10.
There we go. That wraps up my review for The Last Crusade. And that wraps up the original 3 Indiana Jones films, and only one more film in this series to go. One more rewatch in this series to go. Well, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is going to be an interesting rewatch. And we'll see how let's see how my score goes for this one. But yeah, let's see how this one goes. Because this is going to be an interesting one. This is never one I hated per se, but it's definitely one I'm not too big of a fan of. But I've never hated it like so many people call it. Like, so many people like, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is one of the worst sequels of all time. No. It's not great, but I wouldn't go that far. There's worse sequels that came out in the 2000s. Way worse sequels. Some people were really over-exaggerating calling it one of the worst sequels of all time. May not be great, but I don't think it's that bad, because Kingdom at least doesn't screw over Indiana Jones, and thankfully brings back Marion. So there's still a lot of good fun to have with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in some areas. But Till then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.